The greatest system that the world has ever known for the little man to get ahead is the current state of America today. The little man has a better chance. I've been a millionaire twice. I'm so dumb I had to do it 2 times, You got 2 shots. You got an ultimate shots at it. But it's all about me taking responsibility and me making decisions and me understanding that you're going to reap what you sow. So if you put corn seed in the ground, don't be shocked that corn grows. There's technically only one real definition. There's definitions that have agendas. For instance, you hear politicians say that a millionaire is someone who makes $1 million a year. That is not the definition. There's an accounting finance definition for millionaire. It's fairly simple. Assets minus liabilities, what you own minus what you owe. When that equals greater than $1 million, you are by definition a millionaire. It's not a moral construct. It's not a decision of if that's enough or not enough or too much. It's not any of those things. It's a math equation, what you own minus what you owe. The definition of middle class has completely changed. In 1960, middle class was an 1,100 square foot brick home with 1.2 cars in the driveway. Today, middle class is 2,800 square foot 2-story with 2.3 cars in the driveway, meaning they've got on average. So we define middle class by what in 1960 we would have called at least upper middle class, maybe lower upper class. And so we've changed our standards of living so high across the board in America that we have the richest poor people in the world. I'm hopeful it comes under control for multiple reasons. I think part of the reason for the inflation is this ridiculous government policy of just printing money like there's no tomorrow and throwing it at everything and paying people to not work. But the other thing that's caused this particular piece of inflation, it's very unusual, and I didn't see it coming, but looking back on it, I kind of feel like I should have seen it coming. Anytime there's an earthquake at sea, following that, there's a tsunami. If it's a major earthquake at sea. So you'll get a 10-story wave that hits the shore days later or hours or whatever later after the earthquake at sea. The earthquake at sea was the pandemic. We shut the economy completely down. We shut down all factories. We shut down all supply chain. We shut down all production and most consumption, but not all of it. And then we put people back to work, sort of, but we paid them to not work. So we disrupted the supply chain, we disrupted the supply demand of goods and services, and we disrupted the labor markets with this ridiculous policy coming out of Washington, continuing to pay people not to work. And so we've had this perfect storm that has resulted in unbelievable spikes in almost every category. The only category that's not caused by this is oil, and that's caused by shutting off pipelines and ridiculous policy, again, out of shutting down supply. It's a supply-demand curve. Anytime there's a shortage, you see a jump in price. Shortage of toilet paper, jump in price. Shortage of gasoline, jump in price. Shortage of labor, jump in price. That's a supply-demand curve from the 7th grade. So my hope is that 2 things will occur over the next 5 to 10 years to do away with this. One is, after the tsunami, the waves go out, and we repair and get back to a fairly normal capitalistic society again. And my hope is that we change administrations and quit spending money like a drunken sailor. Right, and so we have to do away with the source of their addiction. The government help is out of control because we're helping people that don't need help, meaning that we're paying people to not work that are able-bodied and could get work, and there's plenty of work out there to do right now. Tremendous labor shortages in several industries right now. Try running a restaurant right now. Oh my gosh, it's awful. Try getting hotel beds made. Ridiculously hard. So people in the service industries, the first ones that got hurt the most with the pandemic, quarantine, and the shutdowns, it was the lower socioeconomic rungs. They're the ones that haven't come back. And they're the ones that are holding up, the economy from moving again. And it's all caused by these extended, out-of-control government programs. And it's not being helpful. They're trying to be helpful. But that's not helpful to that person 10 years from today to teach them to not work. Anytime you get desperate, right after that, financially, you get stupid. I've done it, and if you start getting desperate and you're freaking out over the spike in inflation, or you're freaking out over all these disturbances in the economy, and you go to some kind of desperate move to get rich quick in some unproven process, that's just not wise. And so I can tell you what I'm personally doing. I'm personally continuing to do what I've done for 30 years. I buy mutual funds and long track record mutual funds in my 401k and outside the 401k, and I buy real estate that I pay cash for. It's very simple, very boring, nothing sexy about it. I don't get to tell my golfing buddies some story that made me look brilliant, but it's resulted in several hundred millions of dollars of net worth, so it's working out okay. It's the baby steps that we have taught for almost 30 years. But what we found out was that now that we've been doing this so long, There's tens of thousands of millionaires that are millionaires because they worked this plan that we taught them 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 18 years ago. And they're coming into our office to do those debt-free screams that we do on the radio. And they're saying, oh, by the way, when I paid off my house the other day, it's worth $450,000. I've got a little over $1 million in my 401k, so I'm worth $1.5 million. I'm a baby steps millionaire. And that's where it comes from. They followed the baby steps. Baby step 1 through 3 is basically get out of debt and build your emergency fund. And 4 is put 15% of your income into retirement. Now, the average household income is $60,000. If you put 15% of $60,000 away from age 30 to age 65, you'll have between $5 and $10 million in your mutual funds. And so if I'm 10x, 5x wrong, which I'm not, you'd still be a millionaire. And that's how ridiculously simple this is. Now, that's not billionaire. You're not going to have 7 Lamborghinis and a private jet. A billionaire is 1,000 million. There's a lot of difference in Elon or, some of the other guys out there that we talk about, the Warren Buffetts of the world. There's a lot of difference in those guys and a millionaire. A millionaire's living in a middle-class house, got 2 cars, got a nice Ford pickup most of the time. It's about ratios. I would take a swing with an amount, and the way I always visualize it is if I put that amount of money in the middle of my kitchen table and set fire to it, meaning the risk goes poorly, we lose the whole thing, okay? Does it affect my life? Is this a major setback? And if the answer is no, then you can take a swing with that amount of money. And so if you want to invest in Beanie Babies or Bitcoin or gold, or you've got this itch to start a business and you don't know what the flip you're doing, as long as you're not betting the whole farm on it and sliding all the chips forward like James Bond at the poker table going all in, that's the people that lose everything. And then they get this opportunity to start again. And so don't do that. But if you're going to take a risk, for instance, I don't buy single stocks and I don't recommend single stocks, but you can make a lot of money in a single stock. I always tell people that are itching to do that, put no more than 10% of your net worth in that. So if you've got a $2 million net worth and you got $200,000 in single stocks and they all go belly up, you're still okay. You got a $1.8 million net worth. You're going to be all right. You're okay. Everything's fine. But where everybody gets crazy is when their whole thing is based on a ridiculous high-risk premise. Well, here's what's interesting. People who are grateful are generally generous. People who are generous are generally grateful. And by the way, those are 2 personal character qualities that make you highly attractive. Everybody wants to be around you, not because they're trying to get money off of you, but generous people are just generous. They're generous in conversation. They're the ones that hold the door for you. They're not above picking up the plate after dinner and taking it to the dishwasher when you're at someone's home. Generous people are givers. They're not takers. And we all know both kinds of people. And here's what's interesting. That's a decision. You can just decide today, I'm a generous person. It's not a gene. You're not born with it. It's not a DNA. It's not an amount of money. I'm just going to be a person who adds value to situations, not takes value. I'm not a parasite. I'm someone that adds value. And so generosity, oddly enough, changes the person's appearance. It changes the way they carry themselves. It changes the octave you use when you're speaking. It changes so many things that are not quite discernible, but are right there to where we all know who that guy is, that gal is that's generous. And they tend to move into tremendous opportunity in their lives. And they tend to prosper more than the takers do. The odd thing is that the taker, the greedy person, is trying to prosper by climbing over people's bodies, and that's the very thing that holds them back. And worse than that, they're going to tell everybody they know to stay away from you. It's not just you lose the one customer, you lose their entire tribe. You lose everyone they have influence with. My friend Rabbi Daniel Lapin, he says if you go to the auto repair shop and the guy fixes your car and he walks out and you go, how much? And he goes, it was a 25-cent part. Don't worry about it. Just remember me. You will remember that guy. But if you go to the guy and he messes you over, he's not in business in 2 years. Because an auto repair guy who does a great job is a unicorn. Everybody's going to send somebody there. I'm going to tell all my friends I found one. I found a good one. And the opposite is true if he messes me over. And so this idea that somehow capitalism without a moral component to it works is ridiculous. It doesn't work. That's not how capitalism works. Capitalism is an act of service. And when you serve someone well, another buddy of mine says, Ken Blanchard says that profit is the applause your customers give you. And they say, thank you. This wonderful digital world that we live in was not available 5 years ago. The money they can make with a podcast, the money they can make with a digital application of content of any kind right now. There's all kinds of ways to deliver product out of your garage that just simply wasn't possible in an analog world. The opportunities are infinite out there if your brain is screwed in right. Now, here's the thing. There are all kinds of jerks out there that do people wrong, that are immoral, that don't function properly in our culture today, bring toxicity to these discussions, and it is systemic. it is the system you live in. So you got to decide, am I going to ride the wave of negative into victimhood and entitlement, or am I going to rise above whatever the thing is that's coming at me? And it doesn't matter where you come from. All that matters is where you're going.